This is Ag Matters PM from the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network, brought to you by the Iowa Soybean Association. Your daily recap of the information that affects Iowa's farmers, producers, and consumers, right here in the heart of the heartland. With reports from our award-winning broadcast team of Dustin Hoffman, Riley Smith, and Mark Magnuson. Now, from the IARN studios in Des Moines, here's Riley Smith.
Good day and welcome to Ag Matters PM from the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network. I'm Riley Smith. Today is Tuesday, April 2nd of 2024. We're so glad you can join us for today's show. In today's episode, I have the latest episode of Pods of Potential as Andy Peterson talks about some cover crop termination strategies with folks at the Iowa Soybean. We also have a check of the markets, and we'll go ahead and see how they closed at the end of the day.
It's time now for the Ag Matters PM Closing Market Summary, your source for market analysis and settlement prices from the day's trade in Chicago, courtesy of the folks at agmarket.net.
At the end of another trading day in the ag marketplace, we're here with Ross Baldwin of agmarket.net. Ross, first off, how did the grain markets look at the end of today?
Hey, Riley. We had selling pressure across all of the grain space. Really, the only product that was higher on the day was bean oil, which is getting some support from palm oil, trading to record high prices. But that said, corn was weaker. It was 5 to 8 cents lower on the day. Soybeans were the deferred months weren't down near as much. The new crop beans were down 4.5 cents, and the nearbys were 10 cents weaker. And the wheat market for the most part was 10 to 12 cents lower across the board.
So then looking at, particularly the new crop contracts, we've had snow today and then we've had, a good amount of rain recently too. And, there was a bit of concern about dryness and there still is, but having that topical moisture will help out a bit. So are we seeing that in the new crop contracts where maybe there's a little bit of ease going on there?
I think you're absolutely seeing that. And we saw spreads were weaker across the board today, just as we've got plenty of nearby supplies for both corn and beans and wheat for that matter. But yeah, there's just not a tremendous amount of concern right now, looking out for the new crop with what the moisture patterns have been. We've got good rains across most of the corn belt, and there's still rains forecast. I know there's in the 10-day forecast, we got really strong chances of rain here on Sunday, and there's more chances next week. So I don't think you really have that concern. And the moisture we've gotten recently and the cooler temps, it's too early. And so yeah, there's definitely no concerns currently.
And then we'll go ahead and move on to the livestock markets because, of course, the hot topic right now being the HPAI situation. Of course, we saw it in dairy cattle. Now there's a case that was recorded in a human. It's one of the few that we've ever seen. So, how are the livestock markets reacting to that today?
The livestock markets got pounded yesterday as that news had came out that there was a person infected with the avian influenza, and we sold feeders at one point. August fat cattle were down their daily limit of 675. We didn't settle down the limit. We came off of it. But in August feeder cattle, they were down their daily limit of 8.25 yesterday, which they didn't settle down. That came off of it as well. But it was an ugly day, just the massive amounts of uncertainty that came out of that announcement. Because you just, if it seems like no market's like uncertainty, but if there's any market that does not handle uncertainty well, it's the cattle markets, and they've shown that time and time again over the last several years. And you got to manage money crowd that's long both fat cattle and feeder cattle, and so they've got a tremendous amount of concern with these long positions they've got, because essentially while the news hasn't been terrible, there has not been any reports of any dairy cows dying from this. They've all shown that they've recovered. Mainly after 10 to 14 days, they've shown full recovery. It has not spread to beef cows or to the beef industry. And the case that the human had that was in contact with the infected dairy cow, it's been a very mild cases and expecting full recovery. And so there hasn't been any issues there. But the problem you got is just the massive amounts of uncertainty of what's the next headline going to be. So we saw the cattle market have an aggressive sell-off over the concerns after yesterday's announcement. And today, there hasn't been any new news that I've seen as of this recording with you. There's been no new updates that has came out since yesterday. And the live cattle market, we traded a little bit lower here on the opening, but had a decent recovery. April live cattle closed up $1.70, and the deferred months were anywhere from 50 to $1 higher. So it was a good sign to see. And I was really encouraged to see right after the opening that April live cattle, they really didn't trade lower on the day. I don't know if they actually traded lower at all, but they were showing strength all day. So we did see some decent bull spread action with April and June, which I think with where cash traded last week, cash was at 189 live, call it, for the average, and that April with, we haven't traded any cash yet, so I don't know where the bids are going to be at, but April seems content that it's holding a big enough discount for the time being. And the feeder market, which had a complete meltdown yesterday, closing $6 to $7 lower across the board, it was anywhere from $2 to $3 higher. So at least for today, I don't know that we're completely, out of this headline risk, and I really would call it a mess right now. I don't know that we're completely out of it yet, but at least for today, the panic selling per se has subsided for right now.
And that's been kind of the trend recently too, right? Is, we're looking at headlines because even with, like you mentioned, these cases aren't severe; they're very mild in the livestock and in the people. So, we're mostly just looking at headlines, trading off of that, and there was a little bit of fear probably in there as well, right?
Absolutely. And it was I would say for the most part, you turned on the news, whether it was your local news station, they had it at the top of their hour, and across the internet and Twitter. I mean, every major news company had picked this headline up and was blasting it everywhere. And so the fear is what does the consumer think? Does the consumer get scared, and do we have it impact beef demand? And so that's just where that fear comes in. And another point, though, I just want to get out there is there's no public concerns to this. That it's not spreading, through milk. It's not spreading through beef demand. So there is no public health concern today that for the consumer to be scared of. But when you see those headlines and the computers are trading, a vast majority of the trading that we see, they grab those headlines and they run with it. And when the funds are long, that's the price action that you get, like we saw yesterday.
Lots of great information today, Ross. And again, a great point that, there is no risk through the consumption of products from that HPAI. So, appreciate you bringing that up as well. For those of our listeners and our viewers who'd like to get in touch and learn more from the folks at agmarket.net, how can they do that?
You can contact me directly at our office here in Anthon. Our number is 712-373-3276, or you can visit agmarket.net to find any of the ag market brokers.
Appreciate the great information as always, Ross, and we look forward to chatting again soon.
Thanks for having me, Riley.
That again was Ross Baldwin of agmarket.net. We'll take a look at how those numbers close through the market window at iowaagnet.com.
May corn down 9 even at 426.5. May soybeans down 11 3/4 at 11.74 even. May soybean meal down 5.10 at 328.30. Soybean oil up 36 cents at 48.60. Chicago wheat down 11 3/4 at 5.45 1/4. Kansas City hard red wheat down 12 1/4 at 5.63 1/4. Minneapolis spring wheat down 7 1/4 at 6.27.5. May oats down 3 even at 3.52 3/4. On the Merc, April live cattle up 170 at 181.77. April feeders up 307 at 243.50. April lean hogs down 40 at 86.55. April pork cutout unchanged at 96.72. And April Class 3 milk down 8 cents at 15.46.
And that's been a check of the markets here on Ag Matters PM. We're going to go ahead and take a quick break to hear from our sponsor, the Iowa Soybean Association and the Soy Checkoff. When we come back, we have the latest episodes of Pods of Potential. This is Ag Matters PM.
Iowa Soybean Association is driven to deliver for Iowa's 40,000 soybean farmers. We're proud to provide objective agronomic research, a helping hand with soil and water stewardship, and timely industry news powered by the Soybean Checkoff. Learn more at iasoybeans.com.
Welcome back to Ag Matters PM on the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network. I'm Riley Smith. We've got more great coverage on conservation innovation in soybeans with the latest edition of Pods of Potential. In this edition, which you can find on our website under the podcast tab or wherever you find your favorite podcasts, Andy Peterson visits with fourth-generation Iowa producer Ryan Tiefenthaler and Iowa soybean conservation agronomist Joe Webker to talk about cover crop termination decisions, including key termination factors to maximize herbicide efficiency in a tailored seeding mix, which can improve efficiency in the fall. Here's Andy with more.
Well, the latest Pods of Potential episode with our friends at the Iowa Soybean Association is out. We focus on cover crops and termination, and top of mind this time of year, of course, also thinking ahead a little bit, maybe getting started or maybe enhancing benefits that cover crops can provide your operation with our expert, Ryan Tiefenthaler, Joe Webker, conservation agronomist, the Iowa Soybean Association. Ryan, I imagine the sprayers are coming out here pretty soon, and you're getting a lot of questions about timing for termination.
Yeah, there's been some guys out in the field. I know there's some guys put on some nitrogen here before this last rain, so letting the rain take it in, and hopefully they don't lose it before planting here. But yeah, it's we're getting to that point.
Mm-hmm. What are you saying on termination? Understanding, of course, some of it depends, I suppose, on the type of operation and planting green or relay cropping, that sort of thing.
Yep. It's going to depend on what guys are looking to get done. Guys that are going to be wanting to get out there earlier than later would be guys going to corn probably. And if they do want to get out there earlier, I'd be watching them temperatures, especially those overnight temperatures. If you can get them up to where you get a better kill, I would definitely wait. But if you can't wait, then I would put as much product in as you can to help that kill, like we talked about the last session here.
Joe, that's one of the keys, isn't it? Ryan mentioned you need some warmer overnight temperatures for a couple of nights post application. Why is that?
Yeah, absolutely. So we definitely want to make sure that we're getting, if you're looking at the forecast for the next couple days, looking to be at least 40, 45 and above area for 3 solid days is, kind of a minimum. Hopefully we get that and more, and we can have some really good termination practices out here. Like Ryan said, make sure that you're running everything that you need and not cutting corners on this, because once we screw it up once, it's really hard to come back and fix it properly. So yeah, definitely make sure we're watching the temps. That way the cover crop is actually actively growing during that time, so it has a chance to move that chemistry through the system, and then it does its own does its job the right way, instead of kind of just dinging it, and then we have to wait a little bit and try to come back and fix it.
There's a lot of talk about cover crops obviously starting to green up early, given the warm temperatures that we saw in February and the first part of March. Doesn't feel like it recently, but it wasn't that long ago. Did you see any are you seeing any advanced growth, Joe, or when all is said and done here, is it about normal?
I would say, some of the stuff that got in pretty early and had some early growth to begin with definitely looks like it's going to have a pretty strong spring. There's a couple around just kind of cruising through the countryside that I would say are probably further ahead than we've been in years past at this point, for sure. We have kind of had about ideal spring, temps, and had a couple shots of rain here and there. Hopefully that rain will continue and it'll help our, cash crops as well. But definitely does look to be, helping quite a bit with the growth. So, anyone that's out here using it, maybe grazing it or looking to do, some harvesting, whether that's baling or whatever we might be looking to use it for, I think this would be a prime spring for getting maybe a little more bang for your buck out of it.
Ryan, are you hearing some creative ideas to that regard?
Well, I don't know necessarily creative. Guys are guys are doing the same kind of protocol they want to. Usually when they put it in the ground, they know what they're going to do with it. Either we're going to do early spring termination, or later spring termination, or we're going to let it grow and either take it for seed or for feed. And usually those are pretty well your options. I haven't seen anything creative outside of that yet.
So on termination, for what Joe's talking about, maybe being a little bit ahead of schedule, I would imagine that just underscores something you said a little bit ago, and that is make sure to put the proper rate on in order to achieve that full termination.
Yeah, a lot of these places, I mean, it's been a kind of a, I wouldn't necessarily call it a problem, but over the last few years, there's been a lot of different glyphosates and Roundups hitting the market, and they all have different uh, pounds of active ingredient in them. So you really want to read the label and see, just you bought it because it's cheaper. It might be a lot less pounds of active ingredient. So now you have to do that whole correlation all the time. But yeah, you want to make sure you're getting a healthy dose out there, enough to terminate the crop.
They always told me I wouldn't have to know those conversions from, ounces to gallons and cups and all of that stuff after we got through math class in high school. Turns out that was not correct at all, was
Yeah,
it?
no, not at all. It's kind of like shrinkflation for farming, right? We're just gonna delete the active pounds of ingredients and make it look cheaper.
Uh-huh. How do we get in touch with you, Ryan, if we want to learn more and need some advice or looking at cover crops for 2020, the fall of 2024?
The best way is to call me on my phone, 712-830-4502, or you can email me at rdtfarms@gmail.com.
And always go to iasoybeans.com as well and get Joe's contact information. And tune in to the latest episode. It's number 6 of Pods of Potential, podcast driven to deliver with our friends at the Iowa Soybean Association for a much further in-depth cover crop conversation. Gentlemen, we appreciate it. Thanks a lot.
That again was the latest episode of Pods of Potential. Again, you can find that under the podcast tab at iowaagnet.com or wherever you find your favorite podcasts. That's all the time we have for Ag Matters PM today. Thanks again for tuning in. You can find all of our content on our website at iowaagnet.com. Also follow us on social media at Facebook, TikTok, LinkedIn, and X. You can find our video content as well as previous episodes of AM PM on our YouTube channel. Make sure you subscribe and hit the notification bell to see when those videos go live. Don't forget as well our free twice daily market podcast on Apple, Amazon, Google, Spotify, and Podbean. From the Iowa Agribusiness Radio Network studios in Des Moines, I'm Riley Smith. On behalf of Mark Magnuson, Andy Peterson, and Dustin Huffman, we thank you for watching. This has been Ag Matters PM.